three speakers. So our first speaker is Bradley Hampton Wallace. Bradley is a social work student currently finishing a qualitative research project with Gay Men Who Party. His interest in social work goes back to his favorite childhood book story, Our Bodies, Ourselves. According to his mom, he saw our bodies, ourselves on the coffee table in the living room in the house in Ross Carrick. I hope I said that right. Do you remember why you asked me to read it to you? You started reading it during the day, and that night at bedtime, you wanted to know how it ended. Bradley also works at ACT, where he facilitates gay men's coffee night and loves it. Welcome, Bradley. Our second speaker of the evening is Lorito Macarag. Lorito is a Filipino first-generation immigrant, active supporter and volunteer for ACAS, novice social activist, perpetual student, and queer. Best bio ever. Welcome, Lorito. And our third speaker of the evening is Jay Garcia. Jay is a fat, queer, gender non-binary, racialized person of color with hidden disabilities. Born and raised by Latinx refugee immigrants in, I need to refer to my notes, Amisquachi Waskahigan. I hope I got that right. Jay is eager to continue their journey as a settler guest, living, unlearning, and growing in Toronto. As Vice President, Student Life of the Students Association of MacEwan University from 2016 to 2018, Jay worked tirelessly alongside outstanding peers and campus community members to strengthen equity-seeking initiatives, including campaigns advocating for better responses to survivors of sexual violence, strengthening campus queer and trans visibility, and prioritizing relevant calls to action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Off campus, Jay's skills have since been called to a variety of roles and opportunities seeking to strengthen community care, including Courage to Act, the community-based research center, and AIDS Committee of Toronto. Reflecting on their growth as a community advocate, Jay owes much of their gratitude to the many communities that have invested their trust in growth in Jay, providing many moments for mentorship, knowledge exchange, and a meaningful sense of belonging. Hence, Jay continues their work journey with a growing passion for nurturing, caring communities, especially where healing is made possible. Welcome, Jay. Welcome to all three of our speakers. I love how even in the three bios of the speakers, we get a glimpse of the range of approaches and personalities and experiences and just different people's vibes already. Let's get started. Let's get into the questions. So this is our first question of the evening, and this question goes to all three of our speakers tonight. So all three of you will have a chance to respond. And the question is, what does mentorship mean to you? For example, have you ever had a mentor? Have you been a mentor to someone? Or maybe you wish you had a mentor right now. How did you meet the person you mentored or were mentored by? What would you look for in a mentor? And what would you have to teach or share or model for someone if you were their mentor? What does mentorship mean to you? Let's go in the order of our introductions, and because why not? And we'll start with Bradley.
Thanks, Ambrose. What does mentorship mean to me? It's a good question, by the way, Ambrose. Here's my thoughts on this. I do have a mentor now. Her name is Rhonda. And I met Rhonda in a class in third year social work called Collaborative Conversations. And there was a full colon, and then there was like another sentence. And so the title of the course was so long, we just called it Words, because I didn't know, like, it was just such a, and I was like, how is there a course on collaborative conversation? What the fuck is this about? It turned out to be my most favorite class. And I then ended up asking her to be my supervisor on the research, which she happily did as well. She has a background in social justice work. She is a lesbian. She is a woman of color. And her analysis is amazing. And so it wasn't even about location to the issue. It was about the type of thinking that she offered. And one of the things that I found out about her in a different class was that she was involved at ACT just after the earth cooled during the first epidemic, the first AIDS epidemic. And she was one of those, oh my God, it still chokes me up. She was one of those women, one of those lesbians that helped gay men get into hospitals and get care when the world hated them. Not that they don't hate us now. And so mentorship for me, before the 1 minute buzzer goes, is about lifting people up. It's about bringing the past forward. It's also about sharing teachings from hard-learned learnings, right? Like, which Rhonda has done, like opportunities that she didn't get, she's telling me about them now so that I don't have that hardship, which seems to me to be one of the most generous things ever. And I think mentorship is also about honoring how knowledge is constructed, and that we do construct our knowledge and our ways of being and stuff. And so mentorship is about being with someone who is helping you construct your knowing and your knowledge. Is that a minute?
Exactly 60 seconds. Thank you, Bradley. I love what you said. Knowledge transfer is the greatest thing ever. And I agree with that statement. Thank you. Let's move on to Laredo. What does mentorship mean to you?
Thank you again for having me. To me, mentorship is somebody that is knowledgeable more than you in the industry, and for me, it's more about the community. So, like, I did have a mentor. They did pass away. Their name was Luscious. I met them when I was 16. When I was emancipated, I was living downtown by myself on Church Street. But this guy, I thought he was really into me romantically. He was basically my sugar daddy. He would like pay for me going to any VIP guest list parties and pay for. I'm aging myself. There's no Ubers back then, so like limousine rides to places here and there. He was also older. Like I said, drag queen. And he was also like a person of color. He was from Trinidad. So and I asked him after a few months, like, hey, it's like what's happening? Like what's happening with this exchange, right? And it's like, hey, I actually want to be your friend. It was a very platonic relationship. And I think it wasn't really like it is kind of like an exchange of knowledge. Like, he allowed me to be myself. Like he allowed me to be, hey, you can have friends or older than you that have no romantic ulterior motives, and having a sense of sisterhood or community with somebody you just basically just met like the night of. And to me, mentorship is like, somebody that you just that's actually coming from a place of kindness that's allowing you to be yourself. It could be the industry, and to me, like, the community, right? And sadly, he passed away in a fire at 85 Wellesley, but this person had the keys to the city, like, and why would you show somebody at 16, in the middle of like downtown Toronto? Why would you give that with no expectance of reciprocation? And to me, it's being like, a really cool big sister or a really cool big brother. I mean, that's what mentorship is.
Thank you so much. Amazing. You also ended exactly at 60 seconds. All of you are amazing. Thank you for sharing that story with us. I love how you touched on this aspect of our community where relationships can be so generous as opposed to, where you're locked into a relationship or you have only one way of relating to the person, and you are following some kind of structure, almost like you own the person and you don't allow them to grow and I love how our community has always been so great in kind of pushing those boundaries and asking, what is love? What is family? What is community? I love that. I hear that in your story. Thank you, Larito. And now we move on to Jay. Jay, what does mentorship mean to you?
Reflecting beautifully on Bradley and Loretta's responses, I think about where a mentor is a beautiful, or mentorship could be a beautiful exchange of someone humbling themselves at a very human, compassionate level, at least what I appreciate about mentorship, where they could be someone you respect, look up to, have a moment of just inspiration, and they see you. They see opportunities to lift you up, but as well as to get to authentically know you, I would say. There's certain social enterprise, probably entrepreneurial types of so-called mentorship out there that may involve a type of investment, and that's fine too. Those can be as real as people want. I guess my type of mentorship, I think a lot about one mentor that actually inspired me to take my journey to Toronto by the name of Farah Khan, who just recently was running TMU's consent culture, or Students First Consent. Can't remember the name of the office right now, of course, in the moment. But where there's a moment where when we met, she told me how much she loved my eyebrows. And then got to speaking, I kind of said, oh, thank goodness. Another queer person of color on this very white shortbread panel. And then I saw her grill, second wave, very turfy feminist lawyer, won't say the name, but there's quite a few of them, right? In this panel, just where I was in the middle and I was just in awe. And I was like, you know what? This is really loving. What I appreciate about mentorship is just that they can be human as well. And they teach you that they're just as flawed as everyone else, to give yourself a little bit of that self-compassion. So yeah, that's, I think, my brief, I hope 1 minute reflection on mentorship is when there's a moment of human compassion exchange to uplift you, whether they realize it or not.
Thank you, Jay. Whether they realize it or not, as I'm listening to all three of you speak, I have the thought, was Rhonda invited tonight, and was Farah invited tonight to hear these reflections that you're sharing? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Yes, and embarrassing in some way.
Shit. That's terrible. Damn it. That's
It
such a
it
lost
is recorded though.
opportunity.
It is recorded.
I
So
did
if
say
you
the
want to
human part, right?
I'll send it to her. That's great. That's actually, thanks, Ambrose. I appreciate that.
Thank you, all of you. Let's move on to our second question of the evening. And this question also is for all three of you. And I'll also remind everybody in our audience that we will, after we get through these questions, we will open the floor up and have just an exchange with all of you, and you can speak to each other and ask questions of our speakers today, and we'll have a conversation. Our next question is, in what way or ways are you a perpetual something? And in what ways are you a novice? And let's begin with Florito this time, because I took this question from your bio.
Thank you for that. It's very kind of you to say. I am a novice, so I do volunteer a lot, especially with ACAS. I did a lot of trainings for them, and I feel like because of the social landscape, and knowing my own biases as well, like knowing how flawed I am. I have a lot of internalized homophobia and racism, amongst other things, and changing landscape of politics in Canada. You have to be socially aware, and I feel that's why I'm perpetually student. You have to be aware socially and constantly, being aware of your own biases, what's your trigger points, and also I'm a novice activist in that sense because I still don't know how to actually have I go against systemic change, right? Systemic racism and how to fight that in my own circles, at work, at school. And I feel that's why I say I'm a novice, because I really want to see fundamental change coming from me and from my allies as well. Perpetual student as well, because I feel like I want to access my biggest muscle, which is not on my body, it's in my mind. And I feel like going to protests, learning about other people's perspective and other cultures, especially outside of the Asian community, I feel like it's very important to hear and know their struggles, and just continue learning, right? You needed Ambrose.
Oh my goodness, it had to happen. So on your Zoom event bingo, there you go. Check it off, everybody. Thank you, Laredo. So many thoughts come to mind from what you just said. Thank you. I'm gonna throw it immediately to another speaker, because we want to have as much time to speak with everyone tonight as possible. Let's go to Bradley.
What ways am I perpetual something? I love this question. I am a perpetual student. It's a quick sidebar. I was telling someone yesterday that when I told people that I went back to school when I was 50, whatever, however old I was 2 years ago, 55, I guess, people said, "Oh my God, you're so brave." And I was always like, I don't know, it's not brave. It's about being a perpetual student. It's about like F off, kind of. And so when I say student, I don't mean in a classroom, I mean in my life and in my relationships, that I am a student and I'm learning from everything. And so that's what that's my perpetual thing, is studentness. And I'm a novice about everything, because expert stance is boring, right? Like, who wants to listen to someone with an expert stance? Like, let's knock all that on the head and like just press on, because expert stance doesn't help anybody, right? It's too rigid. And so I think I have this, when I read this question, I was like, oh, there's this idea of reclaiming novice and the power, because power is always present, right? It's just figuring out how it's playing out. And so how does power play out in novice? And there's power in being a novice, right? Because it's about flow, and it's about listening, and it's about growing. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And I also think that I know that novice is actually also about vulnerability. And we're all our strongest when we're vulnerable. And so I think just being a novice about everything is just, it seems like a comfortable place to be, and not in a comfortable, I'm not going to talk about difficult issues comfortable, but comfortable as in authentic. And so novice is actually being about a student. It's about being a perpetual student. And that, like, for example, in research, when I did the research, it wasn't about getting answers for me. It was about the responses, so that we could have more nuanced questions, right? It just becomes this perpetual inquiry about life. And then I'm at 60 minutes, 60 seconds. I could go on, literally, clearly.
Thank you, Bradley. And we want to hear more about this research that you're doing that you mentioned. Perpetual inquiry into life. I love that. And Jay, in what ways are you a perpetual something? And in what ways are you a novice?
Not to go a little poetic, but I just think about like a metaphor, and I'll use a conversation that you don't want to end. The learning doesn't have to stop, right? Just like a conversation that's so good you can't put your phone down, whether you're on something or not. And so what I find really intriguing about being able to engage in learning, I always find myself in some of the best situations, especially in a community setting, is when, you know, let's say you're considered a person paid by a certain kind of grant or employer that gives you a job to do with a certain group of people who, know their life experience in and out, like day to day, and you have the gift and honor of being paid to spend time with someone, walking into that room, to be novice of something that someone else or a group of folks, like people living with HIV, for example, would probably know a lot more than someone who doesn't as much. There's a lot of enriching detail and storytelling comes from it. And I feel like the most exciting conversations and vulnerability as well as authenticity. I feel like there's so much more respect when someone feels like, they have a shot at being in the power seat. You know what I mean? Like being able to not just tell a story. It's one thing to tell a story because you have to, you know, prove to someone who really needs to hear it and have them have something handed to them, like be told how it is. It's another thing to be told a story when you're curious and when, you offer a moment of authentic learning, because in those moments you get that back. It's a lot of love and mutual respect in those ways. I always find to be the most rewarding. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it doesn't matter as long as you're always willing to engage. And sometimes the titles just kind of happen. So I won't take them or identify with any right now, unless I have to for like, you know, a grant or something, I guess, because, these systems, they're trying to kill us.
Thank you, Jay. Grants rule our lives. It's true. Thank you for that. That's a very, very thoughtful comment. And I bet there are lots of people in the audience who can relate to the situation that you're talking about. A younger person with a certain job funded by a certain grant, you go into community, but then you have this situated authority of being, the staff member. And I bet people can relate to what you talked about being the person without that kind of power, but then you actually have the truth to speak from that community and your own experience. I bet there are lots of people who are vibing with what you just said. Thank you. Moving on to our next question. This question is for Bradley. How do you engage people from across different age groups in your work as the facilitator of Gay Men's Coffee Night at ACT?
Thanks, Ambrose. It's not about age. It's about experience and knowledge and honoring experience and knowledge, because that is it. That the experience and knowledge in the collective consciousness of Gay Men's Coffee Night includes people that were present at the bathhouse raids. It includes, my dog's gonna bark. Maybe not, maybe she's drunk. It includes, not drunk. She's talking because she needs to. When the fellow told me about being present at the bathhouse raids, it was a huge honor, because it's about then also living with that story as well. And the closeness of it. We have people that are LGBT refugees, we have people that are homeless, we have people that have been charged with HIV non-disclosure. Like the amount of knowledge in the group is so huge, and also the emotional experience. And so with this question made me think of epistemology, which sounds like a $5 word. But I love it so much, because it's actually what I think it is. It's just about a series of questions, like asking ourselves, like, it's not about, like, Gay Men's Coffee Night is about age, it's about knowledge. And so what is knowledge? How do I get it? What is intelligence? What is the difference between knowledge and knowing? What is, what is a knowing that I have that actually creates an understanding? And like how all of this is connected together in these experiences of these gay men. And it's this idea that I think is just so cool, which is that's actually, and I don't mean this in a stupid way, but that that there is intelligence in loving, that there's a type of intelligence in that, and that is, I think, quite liberating. And I remember the first time that I was at a thing, like not an untoward thing, but like a professional kind of thing. And someone asked about Gay Men's Coffee Night. And I said instantly that I loved every person that was in it. And a seasoned RSW came up to me afterwards and said, Brad, you better be careful about loving everybody. And I was like, well, she should, you know, ask me questions about having, like, there's the love and then there's the sex and then there's that, like, there's layers, girl. But the practice of loving as a way of knowing and a way of gaining knowledge, I think is really what Gay Men's Coffee Night is about, which is why I love them so much, every one of them.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you for that answer. And maybe you can, I bet there are people in the audience who are asking, how can I join? So if you want to put a link in the chat for everybody to,
Well, isn't that interesting? Because Gay Men's Coffee Night seems to be taken off the ACT website. So there's that, but people can contact me.
We have nothing to say about that. Okay, thank you so much, Bradley. Let's move on to our next question and keep going. This question is for Loreto, and there's a preamble, which I will read. In some Asian communities, there's this stereotype of the banana, yellow or brown on the outside, but white on the inside. Sometimes we get access to whiteness or proximity to whiteness, and sometimes we don't. Depending on the situation, this may seem like a neutral or even a desirable thing. You get to blend in, you get certain benefits, but it can also be limiting. And perspectives can vary a lot between people of different generations. So can you please tell us a bit about your relationship to whiteness, and especially the stereotype of the banana?
I feel like this question is so multifaceted and multi-layered. I can write a thesis paper and essay all in one. It will be like, I'll be here for like 2 hours about it. But to keep it short and sweet, yeah, I'm a first generation immigrant. I came here when I was 12. So went to grade 8 for a month, which is grade school, and went to high school. So like having that huge cultural clash, also experiencing racism as well. And I had a very thick accent. I had a very thick Filipino accent. So I was actually bullied for having that, especially with people that are Filipino as well. So not knowing that, like, okay, they do have international racism. So like, you know, experiencing that with also racism with other people that are non-Filipino, and going to a Catholic high school. So you have the culture clash, you're finding out about yourself, you have an accent, you're getting bullied for all those things. So like I had to drop the accent, right? So that I don't get bullied. And then, you know, I didn't really finish high school. So for me to drop the accent and, you know, be assimilated to the culture and to Canadian culture, one thing I would say that was my only access to whiteness, because I don't have the education, I don't have the socioeconomic status to be in middle class, right? Like I've been on my own for since I was 16. So sounding like a white Canadian, especially on the phone, you know, when you work retail and doing makeup artistry or hair, you do get that one advantage, especially if you look visibly queer and you're a person of color. If you sound like a Canadian, then you can kind of get accepted to a lot of places more. However, if you have an accent, I'm pretty sure that I'll be in the bottom of the pile. I've been called that too, like the banana. Like, you know, you did tell me, I did ask you about it. It's such a multi-layered. I think there should be another session about this for people who are first or second generation immigrants. And being, like I said, being fresh off the boat, as they say. I didn't even come in here, but I came on a plane. It is such it's hard to sort of like describe it under a minute, because yeah. So the only thing I would say is, like, if you do sound more Canadian, you sound like you're similar to the culture, you do get more accepted into the fold, I would say, which is a really bad thing, right? Because it's centered about white supremacy and, like, you know, making everybody homogenized and normal.
Loreto, thank you for sharing your experience with such a really big question. You're right. Moving on to our next question. This question is for Jay, and it also has a preamble, which I will read. AIDS service organizations, like many organizations, often started as protest movements, then evolved over time to become part of the white corporate nonprofit model. Student governments are also commonly structured to mirror entrenched models of governance. So as a younger person who has worked in both of these settings and is very passionate about justice, equity, decolonization, liberation work, how do you navigate entrenched white corporate structures and still manage to pay rent?
You know, the neurodivergence in me is like, oh, and another example. So rape crisis centers, I worked at a couple of them, and similar things, protests throughout the 60s and the 70s, right? Especially where rape laws needed to be changed, and, you know, funding was overdue for many, many years, even still is. But you know, I'm sure we can find so many examples that we're all very aware about. And, you know, some of us will know about this, especially when our shades are a little bit more melanized than others. So for me, I feel like, you know, when we have no choice but the systems to approach and to work and to try to do what we can within, you know, sometimes you feel almost like you're a traitor, you know, and people have those opinions, right? And I've never been without that kind of backlash from people that I respect and love in various settings. Or when I look at myself in the mirror, you know, over time, amount of times I've done that as a student politician, oh my goodness. I feel like more and more as, you know, you navigate different settings and you just find yourself reflecting, was I just another woman of color in the workplace meme, just like that one from Coco in Montreal? If you don't know that meme, incredible. It's actually a very informative poster, which talks a lot about exactly this question. If folks want more, I'll find a link and post it later. But, you know, I feel like at the end of the day, I reflect a lot on Audre Lorde's, you know, quote, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." And I have to believe that there's some semblance of truth there, because maybe we won't see that kind of bursting fire, arson dream, burn it all down nonsense right in our own lifetime. But at the end of the day, if I can respect myself and the values I prescribe in, you know, more so than whatever nonsensical structural things within. Yeah, paying the rent is important, you know, like I still gotta eat, still gotta live, still gotta rest. And rest is resistance, which is also something Audre Lorde had a lot to say. So yeah, I think those are the two little sound bites I'll offer there for now. But it's important to rest as much as it is to work. And what else are you gonna do when we're taxed and surveilled by the government anyways, right? Am I right? So, gotta do what I gotta do.
We're not being surveilled because we're safe. We're on the internet right now, so we're okay. So survival is resistance, and you have a right to survive. Yeah, I
I'll
just
get Big Brother off the nose.
thank you so much, Jay. And again, these are really, really big conversations that we could have like a whole conference about. And thank you for your answer. It's such a fulsome answer in a short period of time, all of you. Let's move on to our next question. This question is for Bradley. You received an award last year for your research, and you said that you were really looking forward to the president of your school saying the word chemsex at the awards presentation. Can you tell us about your research and why you found the idea of your school president saying chemsex amusing?
You have a good memory, Ambrose. I wanted to hear Kevin say chemsex because for a lot of reasons, and so here's some of them. Heterosexism, for starters. Before I got to the research, I had to be, not that I'm not angry because I still am, but I had to get angry about homophobia because everyone kept telling, "Oh, unlearn you on homophobia." And I was like, what the fuck is it my responsibility? Like, I didn't want like all of this, like all the stuff that was downloaded into, like, I didn't want like, and then it becomes my, like, the work that I have to do. And I'm like, why aren't we naming what it is? Because it isn't homophobia. I think we download heterosexism and that becomes homophobia. And then it becomes my responsibility to unlearn it, and that no one ever names heterosexism so that we can't change the systems. And so I wanted to that is the lens, the angry lens that I approached it with. And it's also about respectability politics, having Kevin say chemsex, which is also a word that is not a community word. No one has ever texted me and said, Brad, you want to chemsex at 2 a.m. tonight? I mean, the answer is probably yes, but no one's ever asked that question. They've asked very differently, of course. And so, and also because in the research, I positioned myself as a drug user, not positioned myself, I positioned myself. It's like for a photograph. But I was open about being a drug user, and this was the lens that I was approaching it with, and that I've been around drugs since I was a kid, right? And the first time that I saw meth, I was in grade 7, which was called poor man's cocaine, which is like, let's not talk. I mean, that is like, we can unpack that, but it's going to take 15, 20 days to do that. And so all of this, because drugs aren't about wellness, like drug laws aren't about wellness and keeping people safe and community health and all that stuff. They're about controlling populations that aren't white and heterosexual and able, and on and on and on it goes. And so I want to be able to start naming heterosexism so that gay men can have better health and stop pathologizing drug use and sex, because sex and drugs, guess what? Girl, we've been doing it since the earth cooled. And so, but now it's like everyone thinks meth is new. And when I tell them that I saw meth in grade 7, they think my mom is like this crazy person and we lived on a mattress like in an alley somewhere, but we didn't. My mom, it was a great woman. And I mean, at the day when I saw the meth, and I was like, oh yeah, they're sniffing meth. I was watching baseball because I'm an enigma and I like baseball, but a gay man who's an enigma who likes baseball. But there's gay baseball players, but that goes back to my lesbian, my admiration for lesbians. And I totally lost my train of thought, because that's what happens when you're excited about talking about this research. And so it's done now, the research, and I'm very excited about it being done. And so that's why I wanted to hear Kevin say chemsex, because I wanted people to say, what's chemsex? And I also want to know how many times you typed chemsex in the chat box that day, because it's so funny. Chemsex, 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 chemsex. It was great. But it's just little acts of resistance that actually dismantle all of the heterosexism that is so pervasive and so, like, even in this dance show that I went to, which I thought was amazing, the embedded heterosexism in all of the dancing is suffocating, right? Because it's always a man and a woman dancing, right? And it's the relation, and it's like, can we have conversations that aren't about Valentine's Day? So yeah, and can we have conversations about sex that aren't about monogamy and all of that rubbish, that we could actually have sex as a way to socialize? It's way more fun than Monopoly, right? And so what are the ways that we can actually express ourselves as gay men and not have this respectability politics suffocate us and say, well, you know, if you do meth, it's actually the end of you. One of the things, last thing that I'll say is that one of the things that one of the participants, one of the themes that was gratitude for this participant. And oh my God, I'm probably gonna start crying because it's so great. And they said gratitude, and instantly, because I can swing to bitch sometimes. And I was like, oh, great, gratitude. Here we are at home since buying plaques, right? And I said, gratitude for what? Like, what's the gratitude for? And he said, for meth and for hookups, for all the hookups I had. And I said, why are you grateful to meth and hookups? And he said, because it has literally saved my life. And I was like, you know, that's the exact opposite of the narrative around drugs. The single story, thanks Chimamanda, the single story around, especially around meth use, and especially around slamming, right? Like, use drugs and it's over. This is how you die, by using meth. And so he's saying it's actually what kept him alive. And so those are the stories. And not that the other stories don't exist, but there's more than one story about sex and drugs, rather than the one that's being told right now, which is a story, but highly influenced by respectability politics and heterosexism everywhere, that we have to, as queer people, that we have to have these heterosexist ways of being. Well, suck it. I don't want to do that anymore. The end.
Thank you, Bradley. But it's not the end, because all these threads that you and people are applauding in the audience, and I applaud you as well. All these threads that you've dropped they could all be picked up and become conversations of their own. Thank you so much, Bradley. Let's move on to our next question. This question is for Jay. How do you foster PHA solidarity across people of different generations? What are the challenges and where are the opportunities?
I feel like lovely theme of what's been shared so far is those little acts of resistance, right? And I want to say that what I really love are just those very moments where you get to normalize what other truths exist out there. So every so often, because I did a favor for a friend, and every so often on hookup apps or a little billboard, my face is on a little GoFreddy ad being like, get your prep on. And so once in a while, I get a little grinder message like, hey, is that you on the thing? And I'm like, yeah, just doing the gay rights thing. But there are other moments where, a one-on-one conversation where someone will ask and, naming, the progression and the gratitude to the folks that have fought so hard for research, progression, so hard for human rights law changes, so hard to even name and disrupt why we have had recent gay blood ban nonsenses, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not to talk about the gay blood ban as if that needs more attention right now. But so to speak, I feel like for me though, what I really have loved and have been really grateful in opportunities, especially more recently, learning a lot from folks living with HIV, that have seen, folks, die en masse and that are continuing to tell their stories, while folks younger than I are just like, what is the problem? We have PrEP now, right? Or the many folks that are sick and tired of hearing it's not a death sentence anymore when they're accepting their new diagnosis in 2023, right? What's real is real is real to the person that's navigating, who's lived and told or heard or been through the very experience that they know. So to a person on Grindr that will be like, hey, is that you in the ad? Like, or why do I need this? I just love being one person to add to the little narrative of the many that have had only the opportunity to pave the way for folks like myself to have, whatever opportunities that I can now to honor their death, but more importantly, to honor the livelihoods of those that are still living with HIV so proudly, right? And of course, like, you equals you, duh. Like, stop with this nonsense of not fucking positive people already, or porn stars that refused with pause porn stars. Like, we're over it. It's 2023. Those are my sound bites for this thing.
Thank you, Jay. You're getting a huge response from our audience. Thank you so much, Jay. I think we have one more question, and then we can chat with everyone in the room. Okay, this question, our last planned question of the evening, goes to Jay and Lorito. There's a very active conversation right now about decolonization and making space for multiple ways of knowing, multiple ways of being and knowing, multiple systems of knowledge, and recovering ancient wisdom. So are there traditions or ways of knowing, ways of being from your communities that you are interested in recovering? Let's start with Jay.
You know, I'd like to percolate my thought for a little bit if that's okay. Loretta, are you okay going first? Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I'm being Filipino, so we were colonized in 1568, right? So, or 65, don't call me on that. So the idea of like ancient wisdom being lost, we were colonized for like over 200 years. There's so much centuries lost on that. So I think, having a different kind of, spirituality, maybe like not, I don't think I'll be Catholic at this point, ancient medical traditions that we have, even values or any kind of the stories that, that wasn't recorded on paper, that was only had on verbally. I think that's something that I would like to know. All those rituals that were lost or that was destroyed due to colonization, right? Even like it's not even the same. It's basically the Spanish, basically the English, the same letters as the English language and the Spanish language. I think there's so many things that are even dances, and there's a lot of like also a lot of queer actually, because we're part of the Astronesian environment. Like there's a lot of queer also traditions that we had. So being queer in the ancient Filipino islands, there's 7,000 something islands that we have. Being queer was not illegal. We can get married to a woman or whoever that you want. We have people that are also similar to being two-spirited in indigenous communities. We have a lot of like a lot of tattoos. We're known as tattooed people. So there's a lot of like ancient ways where like they apply art on your body. I think I would like to tap on that if I was, if I have like, I think the big name for it is grants. If I can have access to grants, go travel all the 7,800 islands and just know each one has their own languages and learn about the ancient rituals and learning about the tattoo arts. I would like to go on that journey if you know anybody that can sponsor me.
Thank you, Larito. I hope you find your granddaddy, as we all look for. We all look for our granddaddies, our grand sugar.
Or daddies, plural, right? Doesn't have to be a monopoly.
Multiple streams of revenue, yes. And Jay, same question for you.
Yeah. And I think a lot about, as someone who woke up and, was faced with the fact that I am a part of a diaspora of goodness knows what's because of different acts of colonization, then American imperial interests that have fucked up El Salvador in different ways at the time when my family fled, to even as recently as now Bitcoin currency becomes a political, capital in the country's sake with current governances. And for me, I feel like there's always something about uncovering your roots that need to be uncovered. And I love whatever moment of solidarity and truth telling, especially where supporting locally, what moments of decolonization, right? And real solidarity relationship building with Indigenous folks on these lands is always been important to me in a sense of contributing where I can as a settler guest. I think selfishly, in my own ways, what I love about, weaponizing things like learning more than one of the colonizers' languages and, freaking them out at how sexy I can say a word, better than they can, or showing up and doing the when nonprofit, political white whisperings, and weaponize those things back, yet at the same time not being given full access because we're still disposable. I feel like whatever ways of unmasking and nurturing, the spirit that honors where we've come from, and especially as a child of a diaspora of, there's only so many roots that I can uncover. I feel like more gratitude and more acknowledgement for where I'm healing is what's most importantly, finding moments of opportunities to come to peace with the violence that I grew up with, in intimate domestic settings where I can give a little bit more peace to my inner child for what I witnessed and know that legacies of colonization and harm taught, my grandfather what to do to my grandfather and other folks in the family, or the different aspects of despair left, my lost immigrant parents unable to understand different types of emotions or abilities to be present in the ways that immigrant kids desire nurturance and love. And yet we're given the opportunity, whether for them or for a chosen fam that invest in us, opportunities to grow and dream and love in ways that they didn't have the opportunities to, but we get to in their honor. So I always like to think about, where I can't dig back and, do an ancestry 23andMe or whatever kind of thing to, joke around with a cup of tea around the Margarets and, Chads. I'll do it where I can accept myself and honor my roots in the ways that I know I can heal from in the future. Because I think that's more inspiring than anything, is to see where we can see ourselves heal, grow, and accept ourselves more so than RuPaul could ever dream on the final four, where our baby photos are put up there and we're, sharing wisdom of good words to ourselves. Get so passionate, tell my neurodiversity is just like, ah. Thank you for listening to me. It's been an honor to speak with you all.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to all of you tonight for your incredibly multi-layered and thoughtful and vulnerable and complex answers to the questions that we posed. So we're doing pretty well on time. We have 27 minutes, and now we have reached the unscripted part of the evening. Ooh, what's going to happen? Nobody knows. Who knows? We're going to throw the floor open to comments, questions from our fellow conversants tonight, discussants. I want to say audience, but I hope people will be more active than that. Our conversation partners. If you have a comment or if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. If you are a reminder about confidentiality, you can type it into the open chat where everyone can see. You can also type it as a direct question to me or to Alex, and we will read out your question. If you feel comfortable, you can also simply raise your hand and we will unmute you, and you can speak your comment and your question. Just a reminder that this event is being recorded, so be mindful of that for confidentiality purposes. Okay. Don't everybody—
Of course, I'm going to speak my mind, Alec.
Go right ahead.
So, thank you for having this panel and having this conversation and opening up. Kudos for bringing and doing this. Because lately I've been interested in this whole thing, and I actually spoke, I think, with Bradley about this, is that, or I know I spoke with somebody about it lately, about the necessity of transferring data or experiences. Like, sometimes I see when you come across somebody who's much younger and you see making something that, from my perspective, is just like, snap out of it, kid. Don't do this. You know that you're going to do something stupid, and you want to say, and you want to share, and you want to guide, but where does this connection happen? How do I reach somebody that is half my age, third my age, when actually already in the back of my mind, I already know, and I'm already coming with this, maybe I don't think it's a misconception, that we are becoming two different generations. There's a cut in the mid-90s where internet came in, and we became two, how shall I say? There's a different way we communicate. We people who lived and were accustomed to interpersonal communication before internet came way of life. Younger generations have different way to communicate. And once we are gone, a whole way of communication will be gone. Where do we bridge this? How do we bridge this? How do I transfer my abilities, my emotional experience to somebody else? Where does this happen? And how do we normalize this to be accepted? In a way, I'm not surprised that it's coming from the Asian community, because Asians are known to have more respect to elders. So of course it comes natural, much more natural to you. And I respect and honor that. So thank you for this. So back to my question, how and where, and go ahead, answer me.
For your question, you have, I can really hear the passion and your very strong desire and your frustration in wanting to communicate and share your knowledge and your wealth of wisdom and your plethora of insight, and wanting to make a connection with other people. I guess a couple of things that I would just throw out there is, as an Asian person, as a Chinese person, I would throw a question mark out there when we talk about, do we have more respect for our elders? I personally wonder. I wonder about that. I'll throw a question mark out there, as I say. I myself reject this Confucian, idea of bowing down to your parents. So I'll throw that out there. And also, I would also bring us back to that wonderful sense of love and community and healing and optimism and softness and generosity that our speakers have shared in answering our questions about bridging, communication gap, generation gap, things like that. And I hope to hear that in the answers from the speakers or anyone else in response to your very, very good question. Jay?
I'll start with a quote. I believe, if not from Audre Lorde, maybe Maya Angelou. I just apologize. My brain can't distinguish which person. Someone will recognize. They may not remember what you said. They may not remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And I always think a lot about the scarcity and insecurity of passing down knowledge. I mean, we have many generations, especially of Indigenous folks of many, many different nations across this country that know exactly how vital, that struggle has been over time. Many of us learning or coming to terms with something like that with residential schools as of late. In a more tangible and personal sense, I want to name and think a little bit about how you may not know what opportunities that work, even Z, for example, that you may already be doing. I think about what we talked a little bit about Kim 6 earlier. Sounds so weird saying it like that, right? But about partying and about using, and I think a lot about my own use journey and how gracious I was to the daddies in the early start of the pandemic. And yes, I was on Grindr while the pandemic started. I'm human, choices I made. And where my introductions came to different types of substance use that was done very safely and done very caring and done where I was taught how to smoke meth out of a ball pipe, things like that, that there are things that just believing in me, just seeing me as a person willing to learn, or just being allowed to be treated as a curious human, you know, where I remember those things. I want to pass those things down. Sometimes I even do it, whether I'm joking with someone where I'm like, maybe I need to show you how to not burn things, or in other senses where, you know, I'm crediting someone for something beautiful that they taught me. A little tiny thing that I know I used from a mentor of mine, Farah Khan. She'd always sign off her emails with the signature "with care." And that is something that I just thought is a nice little disruption to the regards warmly, or something that just adds a little bit more of a human touch. And there are times where I choose not to use "with care" because no, Brenda, this email did not find me well. You know what I mean? You know, little snippets, you know, and I know that communication is so much more vital than two little stories and two little experiences. But I would only hope that as someone becoming a mentor in whatever ways that I can, that there's trust behind those that have mentored me to honor that work and to try my own best way to responsibly carry knowledge, whatever ways that I can. I hope, you know, because I can barely understand teenagers as I go into a GSA meeting and then I'm insecure about, you know, what they're saying about me behind my back, you know, and they're like not even a decade younger than me right now. But the real scary experiences. So I really appreciate your question, Z. Curious if anyone else has thoughts to add.
So you want to, oh, Bradley, go ahead.
I think if we look at daddies outside of a heterosexist framework, they're the elders. Even though I hate that word because it seems churchy to me, I like daddy way more than elder. I never fantasized about an elder, but a daddy for sure. And within that sort of heterosexist structure, when we look at daddy, like an older man and a younger man, we think, oh my God, it's sexual abuse. No. You can look at it in a different, it's a sexual abuse if there's a misuse of power, if there's no consent, blah, blah, all of that stuff, right? But that's the elder. I think is this idea that has been dancing around in my head. And the other thing about passing on knowledge is that it's the idea of an original idea, like the idea of my knowledge. I don't think it's like my knowledge isn't, they're not original ideas. It's compiled from everybody. And this woman I know who died, she lived on Vancouver Island. What she did before she died is no funeral. No, she didn't want anything that afterwards. She called the people that she was in relation with to her when she was in the hospice, and she handed over work to them, like literally the things that she was working on. So I think we have to know what our intention is, what we're working on, and that we're just carrying the torch for a minute, and then we got to find someone to hand it to. So it's not about doing a documentary that's stored at the LGBT archives. It's not about that, although those are, you know, great, but it's about a bigger picture around this ongoing dialogue that actually should never end. That's it.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you for that, for reminding us that knowledge and wisdom are not these commodities that we structure as, you know, things to be exchanged, and you know, our culture that we live in tends to frame everything in that way. Are there any other comments or questions from people in the room tonight, or follow-ups on anything that people have said so far this evening?
I was on Grindr.
So, if you are raising your hand literally on your camera, it's hard for us to notice that. Can you please go to the icons at the bottom of your screen on Zoom and click on raise your hand, or actually now I don't know how to do it. Now I'm telling you how to do it. Yeah, please
for that.
use the Zoom function to raise your hand because it's hard to notice if you are literally waving your hand in the camera.
Yeah, there's a button that says in my side, it says reaction, and you press the button. There's like a heart, and then there's a raised hand. It's like a big button, and there's like
Okay. Thank you,
and
young
maybe
person.
reactions if you have it. Yeah.
People are formulating their thoughts, or they're just completely stunned by the depth to which all of you have gone in
Yeah, I
a
think sort of
conversation.
like I can sort of cut you. I kind of can also add on to what Jay and Bradley said. Like, yeah, like there is so many things you can do, right? Like it is. I'm aging myself. Like I remember when I was like 16, like in like coming to the city. Like there was the second cup steps at Church and Wallasey. Like I remember I used to hang out there. And like this is like I don't know, way back then before Grinder was around. And I remember like we used to like do like this weird MRC whatever. And then I guess it progressed to like Grinder and stuff like that. And there is a coffee shop at like Alexander or whatever around that corner, but across from. Anyway, so I would say, I feel like if you go to like a post-secondary education places like college, university, there is like GSAs or whatever. So that's something that you can meet other people that's younger or older than you if you do want to have that connection. I think Bradley, what he's doing with the gay nights coffee thing is amazing as well. That's something that you can do as well if you really want to have a connection. I like volunteering. I feel like, when I had a beautiful job as a makeup artist for luxury brands, I had amazing time off or days off. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go volunteer. So, if you like doing something like volunteering, dodgeball, I'm not really athletic. I'd rather stay home and watch anime. There's clubs out there that's I think specifically based for what interests are that queer based. I feel like that's something that interests you. Not that you have to, right? I think something like this is amazing. Also, you're open to having panel discussion online. So at comfort of your home, of your device, you can have that as well. So I feel that open dialogue and being open to being invited or having be part of like a how do you call it, like a email list. I don't know, or like a Instagram or WhatsApp group. Like, hey, there's a WhatsApp group for this. I think that's nice, and you don't want to feel like you are going to lose that knowledge. And I'm here because of countless of other queers before me for decades fighting for equality and all our rights. And I feel like if all that knowledge could be like, merged and given to us subconsciously, that'd be amazing. But still have to have the interaction, You can write books or TV shows, you can write a memoir, you can donate to like, a library. I think we should also have a career library, not just the one that we have at Trisha Wallace. Yeah, I forgot what it's called, but we should have our own career library for Toronto too. That's the idea.
Thank you, Laredo. As you were speaking, I thought of the words, just the image and the words of standing on other people's shoulders, right? Especially for someone like you who's interested in social activism. I know that from my own personal experience, there are parts in my own journey of learning where I feel like I'm the one who discovered, this, right? Like this whole issue. And I feel like so excited and I want to go out there and tear this shit down and do all this. And that puts me in a mental space where I don't want to hear an elder or a daddy or somebody tell me, transfer the information to me, right? Like I just viscerally just want to do it myself and run through the shop and break all the china and break all the glasses. And this makes me think of the question that the audience member posed earlier. How do you transfer this information? There have certainly been times in my life when I didn't want to listen. I just was so fired up. And I wonder if anybody else has had this experience of missed connections, showing my age, using this using this term.
Just adding on, earlier today I had a moment. So right now I do a little bit of work supporting a high school Queer Street Alliance or whatever these things are called. And I don't even know how it came up, but I was talking about like, don't worry, we're not gonna have a book burning ceremony or something. And these teenagers were appalled. They're like, they burned books. And I was like, yeah, like, what do you think we have meetings like this for? Like, y'all ever heard about like the stinks that we've had at like Glad Day Bookshop for certain content that the walls had? lewdness, or the government didn't like the things we read once upon a time for so long. It was like one of those like little moments of like, oh goodness, I'm 28 years old and talking to kids a decade younger than I, and I feel like, you know, this is my little moment of just like, but and then another person in the room was probably like, burning books. And I was like, justice for the books, right? You know, separate from it's a little funny story on like, yeah, you know, like I guess, you know, I have those little moments of like, y'all didn't know they burnt books? Like, hey, we got to teach our histories where we can, right? Histories, their stories, them stories, whatever you want to call them. But I see a hand from an audience
Yeah.
member, Horatio.
We have two questions. One from somebody with their hand up, and another one in the chat. So let's have the person with their hand up, and let's unmute that person so we can hear their comment or their question.
Yes, hi, my name is Horatio. Good evening, and thank you for everything you've been saying and sharing. It's been quite inspiring. And one of the things that comes to my mind with just being all together tonight is this sense of belonging. I work as a coordinator for Latinos Positivos, where one of the biggest challenges is to find not only a safe space, but a sense of belonging in the community. And I think it's one of those difficult questions, because how can I tell people where to find a sense of belonging when I don't have that myself at times? So I think I'm just reflecting that to tonight's conversation of we segregate our community with all these labels of daddies and twins and whatever. And on top of that, we have the other segregation of race and gender. It's just too much division. And so where do you find your sense of belonging? Where do we all fit in? And that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. I feel like you've asked, yet you've taken us to another really huge thing in our community. Everybody wants to feel like they belong. We've all suffered, you know, so many people have suffered so much rejection and trauma, and we want to belong. But then how do you do it when, you know, there are all these structures and everybody's afraid and everybody's hurting, and we're incentivized by the world that we live in to not be allies for each other, and to live in ways where we have hierarchies and boxes, right? Like, how do we do that when everybody wants the same thing? If you ask them, and if you look inside like their hearts, they all want the same thing, but yet people create this world that we live in. Like, what's up with that? I feel like we don't have the time to get into what you're talking about, but thank you for bringing this point to our discussion and for asking that question. If we have time, maybe someone will want to pick up this thread that you've dropped, and we can talk about it some more. Right now, I want to read out a question that we've received in the chat, and this is the question. What are some of the ways the three guests have managed racialized and or phobic aggression, passive or aggressive? How have you managed racialized and or phobic aggression?
So I wish there was a book or like an ebook or something that I should have had training on before I came to Canada as a first generation immigrant that's visibly queer and a person of color. No one really tells you how to really process homophobia or racism, like not even in school, right? Even in the suburbs of GTA, they don't really. I feel like because I am part of that Muslim minority myth, like that whole sort of being like, you know, I'm Asian, I'm like one of the better whatever minorities. So I'm used before. I'm learning now. Like I said, that's why I'm a novice activist. I'm a professional student, because before I would just say okay, whatever. Like it didn't really matter to me because I did not respond. Now knowing that, you know, I am living in a systemic racist society that's, you know, based on on the backs of BIPOC people that I do fight back, and I just say I don't really, you just have to whatever is a truth, whatever is a truth for you for that moment, you just say, okay, I don't really like that, I don't understand why you said that, like I don't feel comfortable with your actions, like can you explain to me why that's justifiable, if you're allowed to. I also got bullied when I was younger, so for me to even say that would take a lot for me, and it's very difficult if it's within like a professional setting, like, and especially if you work in retail, like I've done all my life. Like it's really hard to sort of like navigate that and stand up for yourself without getting negative ramifications or being called to HR because you're standing up for yourself. I feel like, talk to people that are also racialized or people also queer, and hey, if this happened to you hypothetically, how would you navigate that without getting fired? I didn't even know there was an HR when I was working at, let's say, Port Renfrew the Bay. I didn't even know there was a HR person I can talk to, right? It didn't even tell me that we have, personal health days or whatever. So knowing now what I knew before, I feel like, again, being a novice, like, being open, like, hey, I should have said this, and don't shame yourself for not even being able to say something at that moment, or not being able to actively, voice your, concern. Like, I didn't like that. That really bothered me. So whatever is a shoot for you at that point. Now, when something similar happens, then you can do or say something about it, and you can always record it. You can always document it, and you can bring it up to the proper people in your job or educational institution.
Thank you, Laredo. So we're almost at time. We have more people who want to speak, but we want to get to our lucky draw of the evening, as is traditional for our ACAS events. So let's do that. Let's throw it to Alex, who is going to spin the wheel, and people are going to win some gift cards, some prizes. Let's do that, Alex.
Yes. All right. So let's do this very quickly. Here we go. So if you're still here, check again if you can see your name on the wheel. This is your last chance. So we're gonna draw 3 e-gift cards. If you are the lucky person, I'm gonna message you. But if I didn't, you can also message me to let me know you want to. Are we ready for the first one then? Okay, I think everybody's here. Good. Okay, our first winner is 10. Okay, I got you 10. I'll write it down. Right. And our second winner is Jay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Can I donate to Horacio, who hasn't had their question answered? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep, for sure. Thank you, Jay. So the third one is, and our last winner of the night, Antonio. Are they still here? Antonio, are you still here?
Uh-oh.
I think they're not here. So I will do another one. So we have the chance. Right. Yay, congratulations, Ithra. So I'm gonna send you a message and we will give you the e-gift card. And I think that's it for the lucky draw. Ambrose, I think we can wrap up. Do the closing. Thank you.
Everyone for sharing your time with us tonight. Thank you for all of your very, very generous, thoughtful, and deep sharing, and thank you for this wonderful conversation and for sharing this space and this time with us tonight. we look forward to seeing you next time. I don't have anything to say. Just feel very, very appreciative and very grateful to everyone. See you next time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye now. So please feel free.
What are fatties?
Please feel free to log off. and if the ACAS team wants to hang back and have a very quick chat after, that would be all right. But our event is over, so goodbye. Don't make us kick you out of the room.
Thank you.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. No, kidding.
Oh, thank you for your comment. Thank you, Ezra. I've never heard of that. You just made it up. Oh my goodness. You deserve all the riches.
That's why you won the prize.
Yeah, as non-binary people, we get to choose our they them in. Our they themifications.
All right, we'll go. Fine.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too. It's
Very
nice to
much
see you.
again.
Nice
Okay.
to see you.
Yeah,
I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye bye.
Oh, poop. I just reported someone by mistake. I just want to remove.
Oh, they can't join anymore.
No. I don't think one time. Okay.
Accidentally asked Bradley to unmute at some point, so my bad, Bradley.
It's only us. It's only Alex and the panel. Do you have anything to say to us, Kenneth? We
Kenneth?
cannot if you're speaking. You know? Okay. No homework? Nothing to do? Okay, I guess that's it.
I think
Thank
that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much
That's
again. I think I received some of the invoices already, so we'll process the honorarium. But thank you.
I did
Thank
see
you. This has been
at
great.
the very end, Jay. I'm sorry to have not called on you at the very end.
Oh, that's fine.
Great moderating, by the way.
You.
Mr.
Yes, that was really lovely.
This is going to be recorded, so send the links to your mentors. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Let's see some tears. Let's make some tears flow.